Hello, NUR 410. Welcome to week 1, Research in Nursing. Please be advised to go over your instructor expectations, revise the tardiness for your discussions and your assignments. Reach out to me before the assignment is due in order for me to review tardy reasons. I appreciate to be informed before the assignment has passed. Be courteous in that aspect. Welcome back. A lot of familiar faces. Hope you all had a great Christmas and your new year is off to a great start, which it should be. You know, you're all enrolled in several classes right now here at Beckfield. Most of you know I'm Dr. Marion Johnson, and I will be in 410 for both sections. I'm sure you'll see me in other classes throughout the term. Welcome back, and let's get started. So this week, we're going to review in week 1, we're going to cover 2 topics. The importance of research as evidence in nursing and the research process. So research as evidence for nursing practice. The practice of nursing is deeply rooted in nursing knowledge, and nursing knowledge is generated and disseminated through reading, using, and creating nursing research. Professional nurses rely on these research findings to inform their practice decisions. They use critical thinking to apply research directly to specific patient care situations. The research process also allows nurses to ask and answer questions systematically that will ensure that decisions are based on sound science and rigorous inquiry. Nursing research helps nurses in a variety of settings answer questions about patient care, education, and administration. Research ensures that practices are based on evidence rather than eloquence or tradition. What is nursing research? Nursing research is a systematic process of inquiry that uses rigorous guidelines to produce unbiased, trustworthy answers to questions about nursing practice. Research is used as evidence in evaluation and determination of best nursing practices. Original nursing research aims to generate new knowledge to inform the practice of nursing. However, nurses may use research to synthesize the findings of others into coherent guide for practice. Nursing research is a systematic process of inquiry that uses rigorous guidelines to produce unbiased, trustworthy answers to questions about nursing practice. We want to explore and describe phenomena that affect health, find solutions to existing and emerging problems. That comes from bedside nursing. That brings it back to evidence-based practice. Test traditional approaches to patient care for continued relevance and effectiveness. Nurse researchers, they use a variety of methods to generate new knowledge or summarize existing study results. They may measure observable characteristics, solicit perceptions directly from clients, assess words and phrases for underlying meaning, or analyze a group of study findings in aggregate. So nurse researchers have virtually limitless options for research design and may assume roles ranging from primary investigator for a large multi-site trial to a staff nurse in bedside science project. But nevertheless, the goal is always the same: to generate new knowledge that can be applied to improve nursing practice. Regardless of the design, research is a rigorous endeavor that is subject to peer review and replication. The two characteristics are essential to ensure that research is unbiased and applicable to the real world. A study is subjected to peer review when experts in the field evaluate the quality of the research and determine whether it warrants presentation at a conference or publication in a professional journal. These reviews are generally blinded, meaning the reviewer remains unaware of the researcher's identity. In blinded peer review, a research report is subjected to appraisal by a neutral party who is unassociated with the research and unaware of the report's authorship. Reviewers determine whether the study process and outcomes are of acceptable quality for communication to the broader professional community. Replication ensures that the findings can be duplicated in different populations and at different times. This characteristic provides the nurse with confidence that the findings are not limited to a single sample, so that the study outcomes will likely be similar in other patient populations. Peer review. The process of subjecting research to the appraisal of a neutral third party. Common processes of peer review include selecting research for conferences and evaluating research manuscripts for publications, what we all go through to get our DNP and our PhD. So blinded, a type of review in which the peer reviewer is unaware of the author's identity, so personal influence is avoided. Replication, repeating a specific study in detail on a different sample. So when a study has been replicated several times and similar results are found, the evidence can be used with more confidence. Research, a fundamental nursing skill. Although many students and practitioners of nursing consider research to be the purview of academics and graduate students, it's actually fundamental to professional nursing practice. There are many reasons why research is critical for the nurse in any role. Nursing is a profession, and along with advanced education and self-regulation, research is one of the central tenets that defines a profession. For nurses to function on healthcare teams as colleagues with therapists, physicians, and other caregivers, they must speak the language of science and use the best available research of evidence as the basis for collaborating and planning patient care. Everyday patient care should have some form of research behind it, bringing it to the bedside and proven to work in bedside nursing. So as professionals, nurses are accountable for the outcomes they achieve and the effectiveness of interventions that they apply and recommend to patients. Accountability is based on a solid understanding and evaluation of the best available evidence as the foundation for the decision making and the patient counseling. So, in current healthcare practice, access, cost, and patient safety are all areas that clearly benefit from nursing research. Consumer demands also require that nurses be held accountable for their practices. Consumers and their families are often well informed about the evidence that reveals the effectiveness of the care. The baby boom generation is entering the years that are typically associated with a higher rate of healthcare use. And this generation is better educated, they're healthier, they've got better access to information than any generation in history. The internet has given consumers unprecedented access to health information, and some of it is questionable. Yeah, very questionable, but For the most part, much of it is of high quality, and that enables them to evaluate the basis of their own healthcare decisions. So in recent years, external agencies and purchasers of healthcare services have begun inquiring that organizations collect and report about the quality of care that they deliver and the outcomes they achieve. These external regulators frequently require that organizations report the evidence they use to make nursing practice decisions. Many nursing organizations are in high process of pursuing or maintaining magnet status, which requires the organization to contribute to new knowledge and innovation in nursing care. Integration of evidence into practice requires both resources and formalized processes. These assets must be evident and useful in a magnet organization. So to maintain magnet status, hospitals must show quality outcomes, best practices, and nursing excellence, all of which require development and dissemination of new knowledge. So magnet status is a designation for organizations that have characteristics that make them attractive to nurses as workplaces. The evolution of research in nursing, sorry. Nursing is a relatively young field. So, nursing is a relatively young field when compared to fields such as philosophy or physics that boast hundreds of years of historical study. Moreover, nursing has not always relied on profession-specific research as a basis for practice. Tongue-tied, sorry. However, as the contemporary nursing literature makes clear, research has taken on fundamental importance as a source of evidence for practice. Florence Nightingale, she introduced the concept of scientific inquiry as a basis for nursing practice. Nightingale's work focused on collecting information about factors that affected soldier mortality and morbidity during the Crimean War. Armed with this scientific data, she was able to instigate changes in nursing practice. So indeed, her work was so impressive that she was introduced into the Statistical Society of London. The years following Nightingale's era offered relatively little scientific work in nursing, likely because nursing education was accomplished through apprenticeship rather than scholarly work. As more nursing education moved into university settings in 1950s, however, research took on more prominence as a key nursing activity. Journals were found both in the United States and internationally that focused exclusively on publishing nursing research. More outlets for the publication of nursing research were established in the 1970s and the 1980s, leading to the communication of research findings to a broader audience. So the creation of the National Center for Research for Nursing within the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, in 1986 was a seminal step to recognizing the importance of nursing research. That was 1986. So in 1993, the center was given full institute status as the National Institute of Nursing Research, the NINR. This move put nursing research on a par with medical research and other health sciences, ensuring financial support and a national audience for disciplined inquiry in the field. The NINR and national agencies guide the overarching research agenda that focuses nursing research on professional priorities. So the mission of the NINR is to support and conduct clinical and basic research on health and illness in order to build the scientific foundation for clinical practice. The ultimate goal for this mission is to improve the health of individuals, families, communities, and populations through evidence-based nursing practices. My favorite word, evidence-based nursing practices. National Institute of Nursing Research, the NINR, a federal agency responsible for the support of nursing research by establishing a national research agenda, funding grants and research awards, and providing training. In the 80s and the 90s, leaders in nursing research met periodically at the Conference on Research Priorities in Nursing Science, the CORP, C-O-R-P, to identify research priorities for the nursing profession. These priorities were established as 5-year agendas. So in the 1990s, advances in nursing research were coming so quickly, and a more flexible approach was required that the NINR recognized that these issues facing nursing science had evolved as healthcare had evolved, becoming more complex. So the nursing process that the NINR currently uses to develop its research priorities is both expansive and inclusive. The formal process begins with the identification of broad areas of health in which there is the greatest need, and identification of these areas of science in which nursing research could achieve the greatest impact. So, to maximize the amount of diversity of input into the research priorities, scientific consultation meetings are held to bring together individuals from academia, government, industry, and patient advocacy. That's me and you. So experts in science and healthcare are consulted, and panels of experts discuss current health and research challenges, as well as future strategies for research and education. These meetings center on topics crucial to the NINR's future, including the following: preparing the next generations of nurse scientists, you guys, advancing nurse science through comparative effectiveness research, supporting research on end-of-life care, forecasting future needs for health promotion and prevention of disease, identification of emerging needs in science of nursing. The 1990s and the early 21st century saw a swift emphasis on research as the academic activity to one that serves as a basis for nursing practice. The impetus for this shift was partially due to external influences that created demands for accountability, effectiveness, and efficiency. Internal influences in the profession also played a key role in this shift, as nursing professionals strive to create a norm of professional practice that is firmly grounded in best demonstrated practice. Contemporary nursing research roles. Are you guys enjoying this so far? I hope you're watching. I'm giving away test questions. I need you to tell me that you've seen that on slide 5, I'm giving away test questions. Okay. Where are we? Slide 5. Contemporary nursing research roles. Let's get excited, people. So the nurse may be an effective member of any number of research projects and may assume roles ranging from data collection to research design. The broad number of potential roles provides nurses with the chance to participate at their individual comfort level while learning increasingly complex research skills. The professional clinician has both opportunities and responsibilities to use research in a variety of ways to improve practice. So, Table 1-2 contains the statement from the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, 2006, that describes expected roles of nursing in the research process. You guys are expected to do this now, yesterday. So, most nurses are first exposed to clinical research as informed consumers. The informed consumer of research is able to find appropriate research studies, read them critically, evaluate their findings for validity, and use the findings in practice. Evidence-based nursing practice. Nurses may also participate in research-related activities, including journal clubs or groups whose members meet periodically to critique one another's research studies. Attend research presentations and discussing posters at conferences also expose nurses to a variety of research studies. Journal Club, a formally organized group that meets periodically to share and critique contemporary research in nursing with a goal of both learning about the research process and finding evidence for practice. As the nurse becomes more proficient in the research process, involvement in a systematic review is a logical next step. Conducting a systematic review that results in an evidence-based practice guideline requires the ability to develop research questions methodically, write conclusion criteria, conduct in-depth literature searches, and review the results of many studies critically. Participation in such activities also facilitates changes in clinical practice on a larger scale and requires the nurse to use leadership and communication skills. Systematic review. A highly structured process of identifying, appraising, and summarizing research studies into guidelines for practice characterized by objectivity that avoids bias. Evidence-based practice guideline, a guide for nursing practice that is the outcome of an unbiased, exhaustive review of the research literature combined with clinical expert opinion and evaluation of patient preferences. It is generally developed by a team of experts. Involvement in actual research studies does not require complete control or in-depth design abilities. Indeed, a system with data collection can take the form of helping measure outcomes on subjects or personally participating as a subject. Clinicians are frequently recruited to participate in studies or collect data from patients or their records. Collecting data from the studies of other research can give the nurse valuable insight into the methods used to maximize reliability and validity. Did you get that? Collecting data for the studies of other researchers can give the nurse valuable insight into the methods used to maximize reliability and validity. Experience that will help nurses later if he or she chooses to design an experiment. So, most nurses do not immediately jump into research by undertaking an individual research study, but rather serve on a research team as an initial foray into this area As part of a team, the nurse can learn the skills needed to conduct research while relying on the time and expertise of a group of individuals. So, serving on a team gives the nurse the opportunity to participate in research in a collegial way, collaborating with others to achieve a mutual goal. So, if you've got a problem at work, get a team together, group together, look at the research, see if it works, bring it to the bedside, research it, conduct it, design it. It's your own project. It's needed. The most advanced nurses are principal investigators or producers of research who design and conduct their own research projects. Those chasing that DNP and PhD, you will design and research your own project. Yes, you will. Keep all these words that you're learning today in that brain. Because individuals are rarely able to accomplish research projects on their own, it's more likely that the nurse will lead a research team. This requires not only research and analytic skills, but also skills in leading groups, managing projects, and soliciting organizational commitment. Principal investigator. The individual who is primarily responsible for a research study. The principal investigator who is responsible for all elements of the study and is the first author listed on publications or presentations. That's an achievement. Okay, research versus problem solving. So research is distinct from other problem solving processes. Many processes involve inquiry. In an organizational setting, quality improvement, performance improvement, and outcomes, outcome measurements all involve systematic processes and emphasize on data as a basis for decisions. For an individual nurse, the nursing process requires that the nurse gather evidence before planning an intervention and subsequently guides the nurse to evaluate the effectiveness of care objectively. Although both organizational and individual problem-solving process may be systematic and objective, these are not synonymous with research in intent, risks, or outcome. That's from Lee, Johnson, Newhouse, and Warren, 2013. Quality improvement, the systematic, data-based monitoring and evaluation of organizational processes with the end goal of continuous improvement. The goal is an internal application rather than an external generalization. Outcome measurements. Measurements of the end results of nursing care or other interventions stated in terms of effects on patients. Physiological condition, satisfaction, or psychosocial health. Nursing process. A systematic process used by nurses to identify and address patient problems, including the stages of assessment, planning, intervention, and evaluation. The intent of quality improvement is to improve processes for the benefits of patients or customers within an organizational context. Quality improvement is basically a management tool that is used to ensure continuous improvement on a focus. Quality improvement is basically a management tool that is used to ensure continuous improvement and a focus on quality. Continuous improvement and a focus on quality. Research, in contrast, has a broader intent. Its goal is to benefit the profession of nursing and contribute to the knowledge base for practice. Research benefits more people because it becomes more broadly applied. Quality improvement is beneficial simply because of its specificity to a single organization. How's everybody doing so far? You with me? because we're only on slide 8 right now. We got a way to go. Are you comfortable? I hope you guys are watching. I'll be very happy if somebody could tell me that my water bottle is pink. Anybody, one person. What color is Dr. Johnson's new water bottle? Compliments of my son, who may walk through that door anytime. If you guys can answer these questions, I'm giving extra credit. You can post it in the forum. What color is my water bottle? Who bought it for me? I'd be so happy to know that you guys made it 30 minutes in. I'm creating a YouTube channel, so I'm out there. I'm doing this. Okay. The risk for a subject who participates in a quality improvement study is not much more than the risk associated with receiving clinical care. Such studies are frequently descriptive or measure relationships that are evidenced by existing data. So often patients who are the subjects of study for a quality improvement project are unaware they're even part of the study. So in contrast, in a research project, subjects are clearly informed at the beginning of the project of the risks and benefits associated with participating in the study. And they are allowed to withdraw their information at any time. Upfront and informed consent is central to the research process. Finally, the outcomes of a quality improvement study are intended to benefit a specific clinical group and so are reviewed by formal committees and communicated internally to organizational audiences. So research findings are subjected to rigorous peer review by neutral external reviewers, and the results are expected to stand up to the attempts to replicate them. When quality improvement projects are planned with an exception of publication, the distinction becomes less clear. Is the goal of publication to share perspective on a process or to generalize the results to a broader group of patients? If the latter goal is targeted, then quality improvement projects should be subjected to the same rigorous review and control as a research project. The intent when an individual nurse applies the nursing process for problem solving is even more specific. The nursing process requires an individual nurse to gather data about a patient, draw conclusions about patient needs, and implement measures to address those needs. Data collected from the patient are used to evaluate the effectiveness of care and make modifications to the plan. These steps mirror the research process but take place at an individual level. Research is useful when the nursing process as a source of knowledge about assessment procedures, problem identification, and effective therapeutics, but simply using the nursing process does not constitute research. Research as evidence in nursing practice. It would seem a foregone conclusion that effective nursing practice is based on the best possible, most rigorously tested evidence. Yet it is only in the past 2 decades that emphasis on evidence as a basis for practice has reached the forefront of professional nursing. Although it may be surprising that the scientific basis for nursing practice has been this long in coming, many reasons exist to explain why evidence-based nursing practice is relatively recent effort. The past decade has been unprecedented advances in information technology. making research and other types of evidence widely available to healthcare practitioners. Whereas a nurse practicing in the 1980s might have read one or two professional journals per month and attended perhaps one clinical conference in a year, contemporary nursing professionals have access to a virtually unlimited array of professional journal articles and other resources of research evidence via the internet. Hence, when you upload your weekly activities, you should be using peer-reviewed journals. You should be citing sources where you get your information. It is crucial that you do that you are doing your research and citing sources. So there's another pop question. Slide 10. Technology has supported the communication of best practices and afforded consumers open access to healthcare information as well. So as a result, evidence-based practice is quickly becoming the norm for effective nursing practice. Evidence-based practice. What is evidence? What evidence-based practice? I said that wrong. What evidence-based practice is? Evidence-based practice is the use of scientific evidence integrated with clinical experience and incorporating patient values and preferences in the practice of professional nursing care. All three elements in this definition are important. As illustrated in Figure 1.1, the triad of rigorous evidence, clinical experience, and patient preferences must be balanced to achieve clinical practices that are both scientifically sound and acceptable to individuals applying and benefiting from them. Evidence-based practice, the use of best scientific evidence integrated with clinical experience and incorporating patient values and preferences in the practice of professional nursing care. Although healthcare practitioners have long used research as a basis for practice, a systematic, sorry, I have to check my battery. Although healthcare practitioners have long used research as a basis for practice, a systematic approach to the translation of research into practice has emerged only in relatively recent times. Impetus for evidence-based practice was a 1990 comment by a Canadian physician on the need to bring critical appraisal to the bedside. The first documented use of the term evidence-based practice appeared less than 2 decades ago when a clinical epidemiology text used the term to describe the way students in medical school were taught to develop an attitude of enlightened skepticism towards the routine application of diagnostic technologies and clinical interventions in their daily practice. Medical students. Anyway, the authors described how effective practitioners rigorously review published studies to inform clinical decisions. The goal, as stated in this publication, was an awareness of the evidence on which professional practice is based and a critical assessment of the soundness of that evidence. Excuse me. The term entered the U.S. literature in 1993 when an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association described the need for an established scientific basis for the healthcare decisions. The authors of this article noted that the goal of evidence-based practice is to help practitioners translate the result of research. Battery low. Hold on. Okay. Medical Association described the need for an established scientific basis for healthcare decisions. The authors of the article noted that the goal of evidence-based practice is to help practitioners translate the results of research into clinical practice. And they recognize that the scientific practice of healthcare required sifting through and appraising evidence to make appropriate decisions. Even the relatively recent birth of the term, my favorite term, evidence-based practice, has rapidly evolved into an international standard for all healthcare practitioners. Using the best scientific evidence as a basis for practice makes intuitive sense and places nursing in the company of other science-based health professions in using evidence as a foundation for clinical decision-making. What evidence-based practice is not? A wide range of activities contribute to evidence-based practice. Many of these activities reviewing research, consulting expert colleagues, considering patient preferences are common in nursing practice. Even so, many such activities are not considered evidence-based practice, but rather other forms of decision-making used to solve problems. I need to know if my lighting is right also. Is it too bright in here? Okay, what's my favorite word? Evidence-based practice. Know that term. Although evidence-based practice serves as a mechanism for solving clinical problems and making decisions about interventions, it remains distinct from traditional problem-solving approaches in healthcare. Conventional decision-making about clinical practices relied on expert opinion, sometimes achieved by consensus, but rarely through experimentation, combined with standard practice. Evidence-based practice is a systemic process of critically reviewing the best available research evidence and then incorporating clinical experience and patient preferences into the mix. Got it? Evidence-based practice is not solely randomized controlled trials. Evidence-based practice does not mean choosing only those interventions supported by randomized controlled trials. Although these studies are clearly important in providing guidance for effective practices, a somewhat tongue-in-cheek article by Smith and Pell suggested that we did not need a randomized trial to inform practitioners of the importance of a parachute as a measure of preventing death when jumping from an airship. Okay, hold on. A somewhat tongue-in-cheek article by Smith and Pell suggested that we did not need a randomized trial to inform practitioners of the importance of a parachute as a measure of preventing death when jumping from an airplane, and in fact noted the difficulty in recruiting a control group for such a trial. Evidence-based practice does not rely solely on one type of evidence, but rather is founded on a hierarchy of evidence with individual studies rated on a scale from strongest to weakest, based on the type of design and quality of execution. Evidence can come from many different types of studies in addition to randomized trials. Randomized controlled trial. An experiment in which subjects are randomly assigned to groups, one of which receives an experimental treatment while others serves as a control group. The experiment has a high internal validity, so the researcher can draw conclusions regarding the effects of the treatment. Evidence-based practice is not cookbook medicine. Let's go there. So guidelines based on the best available evidence do not mean the practitioner has an edict to practice in a single way. In fact, evidence alone is never sufficient to make a specific clinical decision about a specific patient. A nurse needs evidence plus good judgment, clinical skill, and knowledge of the patient's unique needs to apply evidence to a specific patient care situation. Don't we? Yes. The definition of evidence-based practice, in fact, holds evidence as only one element in the triad of decision-making. Clinical judgment and patient values must be considered when applying the evidence to a particular situation. Evidence is not the same as theory. Theoretical effects must be tested and retested before they can be determined to be effective. As late as the early 20th century, physicians still believed that bloodletting was an effective treatment for a host of disorders. This belief was based on the empirical observation that a patient's pulse rate slowed when he or she was bled, and the theory that a slower pulse reduced irritation and inflammation. Although the empirical observations were accurate, the patient's pulse would slow, indeed, but due to ensuing hypovolemic shock. So, the theoretical relationship to a therapeutic response was ill-founded. Many contemporary healthcare interventions are, unfortunately, based on similar theoretical relationships that have been untested for years. Recent research have refuted many of these theoretical assumptions, including the protective value of hormone replacement therapy, the use of rubbing alcohol to prevent infections in a neonate's umbilical cord, and the use of heat to treat acute inflammation, among many others. Evidence-based practice is not evidence-based medicine. The nature and processes of research are likely to be unique from any given profession. In the healthcare realm, medicine and nursing have different philosophical roots and approaches to patient care. Medicine relies on an extensive scientific basis that is primarily concerned with the cause of disease and effects of treatment. The evidence of medical care, by necessity, focuses on the scientific studies that quantifies these effects. Nevertheless, medical evidence has been criticized for its sometimes artificial nature. It is research paradox that the more an experiment is controlled, the less applicability the results have in the real world. Randomized controlled trials then may provide the most rigorous scientific evidence, but the evidence may not apply very well to individual patients with a broad range of physical, psychological, and behavioral conditions. Nursing, in contrast, requires a holistic approach to the care of individuals with physical, psychosocial, and spiritual needs. So this care is founded on the nurse-patient relationship and the nurse's appreciation for the patient's unique needs. The evidence for nursing care then requires a broad range of methodologies as a basis for care. This is not to imply that these sources of evidence are not subjected to healthy skepticism or systematic inquiry, but rather than a broad range of evidence is considered as a basis for practice. The importance of evidence-based practice in nursing. Evidence-based practice is important to the nurses for many reasons. At the top of the list is the contribution of evidence to the effective care of patients. Studies have supported the contention that patient outcomes are substantially improved. They're improved when healthcare is based on evidence from well-designed studies versus tradition or clinical expertise alone. In one recent meta-analysis, Lufer and Cleary hold off aggregated outcome studies related to evidence-based practice changes. A wide range of effects were found in multiple specialties, including orthopedic, cardiovascular, respiratory, and obstetrical outcomes. Evidence-based practices in obstetrics and neonatal care reduce morbidity and mortality, sometimes dramatically. The use of corticosteroids in premature labor, for example, reduced the risk of premature infant death by 20%. Another seminal meta-analysis by Heater, Becker, and Olson in 1998 demonstrated the impact of evidence-based practices on a range of behavioral, physiological, psychosocial aspects of patient well-being. The linkage between evidence-based interventions and outcomes is an important one, and determining the scientific support for a practice prior to its implementation makes intuitive sense. Today's healthcare providers operate in an era of accountability in which quality issues, patient safety, and cost concerns are primary drivers of patient care processes. Practices that are unnecessary are eliminated. Ineffective practices are replaced with practices that resulted in desired outcomes. Existing practices may be unintentionally harming patients, as we found in the hormone replacement studies. So it is ethically unjustified to continue using untested interventions. Evidence can help healthcare professionals avoid making errors in decision-making relative to patient care. Using research decreases the need for trial and error, which is time-consuming and may prove counterproductive. In any case, time is not wasted on practices that may be ineffective or unnecessarily time-intensive. Today's consumers are well informed about the options for personal health care and often resist the traditional paternalistic approaches to health interventions. The public expects the care will be based on scientific evidence and believes that care processes should be routinely led to high-quality outcomes that are physically and mentally desirable. Healthcare professionals, in turn, must be able to respond to their patients' questions about the scientific merit of interventions and about the relative belief of the treatment outcomes. Evidence might come in the form of journal articles, policy, guidelines, professional consensus, statements, and standards of practice, as well as formalized research. Although evidence-based practice amplifies scientific evidence, the words relevance and rigorous might be better adjectives to describe the kind of evidence needed by healthcare professionals. Critical skills include the ability to judge both the type of evidence that is needed and the value of that evidence. Healthcare practitioners do not practice in professional isolation, but rather explore what works and does not work using empirical methods. An increased emphasis on evidence-based practice can be viewed as a response to these broader forces influencing the context of healthcare. The healthcare delivery as a logical progression towards the utilization of research as a basic for patient care decisions. How can evidence be used in healthcare? So, how can evidence be used in healthcare? At its best, evidence provides the basics for effective, efficient patient care practices. At a minimum, an evidence-based approach can enhance practice by encouraging reflection on what we know about virtually every aspect of daily patient care. The evidence-based practice process need not be onerous because it basically entails 6 elements. Ask a relevant clinical question, search for the best evidence in the literature, critically appraise the evidence, integrate the evidence with clinical experience and clinical preferences, evaluate the outcomes of the practice change, and disseminate the outcome. The original question can come from a variety of sources in the healthcare settings. Likewise, evidence can improve outcomes for a wide range of organizational processes. Evidence as a basis for healthcare processes. Evidence can be incorporated into virtually every phase of the healthcare process. For example, evidence exists for best practices in the following areas: assessment of patient conditions, diagnoses of patient problems, planning of patient care, interventions to improve patients' function or condition or to prevent complications, evaluation of patient responses to the intervention, evidence as a basis for policies and procedures. Although healthcare professionals from different educational programs, backgrounds, and experiences may have different ways of delivering patient care, few can argue with the need for best practices. Evidence-based practice provides the foundation for policies and procedures that are tested and found effective, as opposed to the way we've always done it. Evidence as a basis for patient care management tools. The evidence that is revealed through systematic review of research and other sources provides an excellent basis for patient care management tools such as care maps, critical paths, protocols, and standard order sets. A major benefit of using patient care management tools is reduction of variability in practices, and evidence serves as a rational basis for standardized practices. Evidence as a basis for care of the individual. The complexity of patients who need care in the healthcare system can make the clinician wonder if evidence can ever be applied to an individual patient. It is easy to consider the question, is my patient so different from those in the research that results will not help me make a treatment decision? This question, more than any other, may stand in the way of applying evidence to the individual patient care situations. In fact, one study found that the more familiar a patient was to a practitioner, the less likely the clinician was to use evidence as a basis for that person's care. So as practitioners, we must ask whether these assumptions about the uniqueness of the patients are in their best interests when it comes to clinical care. Uncertainty is inherent in the healthcare process. Evidence helps to quantify that uncertainty. Concern for the uniqueness of the individual patient is not a reason to ignore the evidence, but rather an impetus to learn to critically apply it appropriately. Evidence is not intended to be rigid, but rather our definition makes explicit to be integrated with clinical experience and a patient's unique values to arrive at optimal outcomes. Evidence in clinical practice is not solely limited to patient care, however. Healthcare professionals might be interested in evidence as it relates to the team functioning, the best way to communicate change, organizational modules for research utilization, or the effects of insurance or healthcare usage. Evidence in healthcare abounds on a variety of topics, and research utilization can improve patient care in a multitude of ways. I need you to review in depth slide 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18, I'm going to do a summary of key concepts. The practice of nursing is founded on nursing knowledge, and nursing knowledge is generated and disseminated through reading, using, and creating nursing research, the title to our book. Nursing research is a systematic process of inquiring that uses rigorous, systematic approaches to produce answers to questions and solutions to problems in nursing practice. Research is designed so that it is free from bias and results are trustworthy. The hallmarks of solid, well-respected research are peer-reviewed and replication. Nurses may use research to synthesize these findings of others, explore and describe phenomena, find solutions to problems, and test traditional approaches for efficiencies. Nursing is a relatively young profession, but its practitioners have a proud history of disciplined inquiry. The National Institute of Nursing Research gives nursing research national stature and financial support, and also establishes a national agenda of priorities for nursing research. This concludes week 1 lecture for nursing research, NUR 410. I am your instructor, Dr. Marion Johnson. Welcome back. Any questions, concerns, please reach out to me. Utilize your instructor resources. Please review your syllabus. Please review prior to week 1 all of your instructor-led guided resources. Everything that I have put into class, please review. Any questions, just text me. Thank you very much. Have a great week.